This What's Working with Cam Marston podcast is brought to you courtesy of First Horizon Bank.
Hi, I'm Tabitha Scott, a human dynamics expert and the host of Bucket Listening, brought to you by First Horizon Bank. I hope you will join me as I sit down with people from all walks of life to learn how their passions, insights, and persistence have helped them turn their bucket list into a beautiful life.
Tune in on your preferred platform or visit firsthorizon.com/podcast.
Let's do this. Welcome, everyone, to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. Thank you so much for being along for the ride on another show. This show I've kind of gotten out of order. You won't know this. It'll play beginning to end on your side, but we've already done the interview before I've done the intro, just due to the way the scheduling works, and my inability to schedule efficiently often works. And I can tell you, the content upcoming is solid stuff. Before we get into that, to my new listeners, What's Working is about workplace, workforce, and marketplace trends. My goal is to find guests who can talk about those trends in such a way that you and I can learn from them and their ideas and concepts from these trends that we can take and apply to our own businesses. I want each of us to come away from this interview just a little bit better at whatever it is that we do, be able to apply it to our business, to our family, to our life, whatever it may be. The show is about workplace, workforce, and marketplace trends, but if there's something that we can do that will make it better outside of those domains, let's do it. Here we go. Marty Gründer is my guest. Marty Gründer runs a company called the Grow Group. It's a training and development. It's a strategic development organization that he invites. Well, let's go start with Gründer Landscaping. Marty's going to tell you he started this in high school, and he's looking to make a little bit of extra money. Today, it does a boatload of money. They're growing out of Dayton, Ohio, where he began it, where he went to school, and they've got operations upcoming in, I think he says, Cincinnati. It's growing quickly. It's the many multi-millions of dollars of, I think, $500 million of growth in that amount of time. And he started it as a hobby to earn his way through college. Many entrepreneurs begin kinda similarly. They find something that they can do that perhaps they enjoy doing. Marty liked getting his hands in the dirt. He likes creating a landscape that's beautiful for the home or the business that it supports. And he made a business out of it, and suddenly it grew. Well, not suddenly. It patiently and effectively and deliberately grew. At some point, every entrepreneur, and I know many of you listening can relate to this, has to let go of what it is that they do, that they enjoy so much, and choose to get into something else. Because in order for their business to grow, they can no longer do the thing that brought them into that business. Marty, like I said, liked to get his hands dirty. At some point, he had to say, I can't do this anymore, because in order to grow the business, I've got to hire people, manage people, lead people, do strategic planning. I got to get away from the stuff that I enjoyed so much in order to grow the business. And one of the questions you're going to hear Marty answer here when we come back from break is, what was that moment, Marty? What was the moment when you had to back away? And what was the decision? And what was it like? And did you have to learn to like other things in order to grow the business? Marty, you'll learn, is a big fan of culture. And we've heard on this show a number of times the importance of a workplace culture. He will define culture in such a way that I think every listener will get the significance of it and what it means for your own business, your own team, for your own nonprofit, your own volunteer group, whatever it may be, the significance of the culture. And we're also going to get into training, how he gives feedback to his people in a way that I think the current HR world finds inappropriate, would say it needs to be done differently. But Marty's going to tell you very clearly, this is the way I've been doing it. I learned about it from the Army. It works this way. It continues to work this way, and I will not give it up because it works this way. He also has some very strong comments about the value of an HR department. His company's huge. He does not have an HR department. We'll get into that. In other words, we got solid stuff upcoming. and I want you to hang in there with me. You're going to hear this show and you're going to want to send it on to people. This is also a podcast. Go to what'sworkingcam.com where you can find this show as well as previous shows, and you have the ability to subscribe as well as send it on to other people. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston, coming to you out of Mobile, Alabama. In just a moment, I'll have Marty Gründer on the other side of a Zoom call from me, coming out of Dayton, Ohio. Workplace, workforce, marketplace trends. We'll be right back after this break.
This is Seth Cherniak, Vice President of Branch Development for the Jeffrey Matthews Financial Group. If you're an experienced financial advisor wanting the freedom of independence, but aren't sure making that jump is right for you, we should talk. Jeffrey Matthews has developed a successful program for advisors who don't want to be 1099 contractors and don't want to pay for their own overhead. We're looking for advisors who want the freedom to run their business the way they see fit, with the support that comes with a W-2 firm. If you're interested in joining one of our branches, or if you want to open your own branch as a full-time employee, let's chat. Our compensation plan is one of the most competitive among all W-2 firms, big or small. Reach out to us today at jeffreymatthews.com, connect with me, Seth Cherniak, on LinkedIn, or click the link in the podcast.
Jeffrey Matthews Financial Group, member FINRA, SIPC. We are back. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. Again, thank you for joining us on today's show. Got a good guest for us today, Marty Gründer. Marty, if I'm not mistaken, I should have asked you this before we started the recording. Dayton, Ohio. Is that correct?
Ohio, Southwest Ohio. Most people know where Cincinnati, Ohio is, home of our beloved Bengals, Who Dey, about 40 minutes north of Cincinnati.
Dayton, Ohio. He comes to me as a referral for my regular listeners from Joe Calloway. We got a lot of great feedback on Joe Calloway's show several weeks ago. And I reached out to Joe and said, hey, Joe, who can do you better? Who's a better interview than you? And he pointed at Marty. Marty, we're glad to have you. Welcome to What's Working. Let's begin by talking about your background, the business, and perhaps what maybe made Joe point you out amongst all his connections.
Well, hopefully I don't disappoint Joe, Cam, but I started a landscaping company when I was in high school as a way to make money to pay for college. By the time I was a senior in college, the business did $80,000 in sales that year. I went on to the University of Dayton where I studied business. By the time I was a senior at the University of Dayton, the business was doing over $500,000 a year in revenue, and I've been doing it ever since. Next year will be our 40th year in business, and it's been a lot of fun, Kim. Obviously, there's been a lot of struggles and a lot of successes. We're doing a short radio spot here because we're going to talk about my successes. If I were to talk about my failures, I often joke it would take many days, probably months to talk about those. But in your failures, as you well know, you learn.
Yeah, well, one of the questions that we've been asking many of our guests like you is to visit their greatest business failure. Tell us a little bit about it. What happened? What did it teach you? And perhaps we'll do that as we move down the line. Your business growth, it sounds like you picked this up as a hobby. That's a strong word, as a student, and it's grown into a business. Is there a path there for my listeners to say, hey, you got a hobby that can ultimately produce a revenue? You're now 40 years into this hobby. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I think, Zig Ziglar said, young people may have never heard about Zig. You and I know who he is. He was a motivational speaker, a great salesperson, a great business philosopher. I heard him once say, if you find a job you love, you'll never work a day in your life. So,
yeah.
My business is rooted in a passion for horticulture, a passion for landscaping. I grew up on a small gentleman's farm, is what you would call it. And I love to grow things. And today that remains true. I love to grow plants. And ironically, I love to grow people too. And there's a common theme there around developing people. And, your business at the end of the day is only as good as your people are. And I mean, when you talk about my biggest failure, the one that I remember the most was back in the mid 90s. I bought 2,500 Christmas trees, opened up a Christmas tree stand because I thought that would be something to help supplement our income. And on December the 23rd, I had 2,300 Christmas trees left. So you know what you call that, right? That's mulch. So that was a big lesson for somebody in their 20s to take a financial hit like that. I mean, I was looking for ways to make money, and it actually cost me about $30,000. So those mistakes, they're tough, but you learn from them and you get better. And all of my success is a product of the mistakes I've made. So they kind of go hand in hand, Kim.
Yeah, so you collect mistakes. I remember talking to a salesman one time and said, I'm not after yeses, I'm after no's. And every
Right.
no gets me better. And after 10 no's, I'm going to get a yes. So I go throw myself into getting those no's, knowing that the yes is around the corner. Let's talk about real quick one of the challenges that so many entrepreneurs have. And that's from going from a small startup into having to delegate, into having to hire people, into having to take you likely out of the part of the job that you loved the most, which got you into it. Hands in the dirt, perhaps, hands on the equipment. And then you had to step aside, hire people, train people. When was that decision made? When did you realize I can't keep doing what I love, what I originally loved anymore? Tell me about that.
I was married with 2 children when we crossed the $1 million mark in revenue. And when I got beyond that, I could no longer, the span of control the things I was able to keep hands on and control, we started to show some cracks, and I had to bring other people on me. Now, if I wanted to stay at $1 million a year in sales, I could have done that myself. I could still sufficiently handle the accounting, the work orders, the sales. I could pretty much do most of the administration myself with, an assistant. But to grow, to have other people representing me as salespeople, to have other people representing me to, run crews and get things done, it meant that I had to learn how to delegate. And, what I found in that journey, Cam, was that what gets most entrepreneurs, and $1 million a year is just what we find in my other company, the Gründer, our consultancy, $1 million a year in sales. You can control that. One person can pretty much control most businesses at that level. When it gets beyond that, you can't do it all yourself. And you're either going to have to stay at $1 million, or if you want to grow and if you want to make money and not tick off customers, you're going to have to put important tasks in the hands of others. And that's what I learned how to do. So I think most successful business owners, and I'm talking owners that grow entities to multiple locations and things like that, they become very good at delegating. Delegation, Cam, is not abdication. It doesn't mean you remove yourself from it. It means that you're still involved with it. You set up the process. But as a rule, we here at Gründer Landscaping and in our clients at the Grow Group, we tell everyone that if someone else can do it 75% as well as you can, let them do it. The first landscape jobs that I did were worse than some of these jobs I see when I go around town looking at new startups and the work they're doing. We all start someplace. And, Bill Belichick, the renowned coach of the New England Patriots, has no touchdowns, no tackles, no field goals, but he's won, 6 Super Bowls. So you envision yourself as a coach. You practice, you set people up, but you can't go onto the field and play. You have to stay on the sidelines. And I love that analogy.
Yeah, I like that. I've never heard that before, and I like it as well. When you began to bring people in, did you select which role you wanted? In other words, I want to stay in front of the customers. That's what I like the most. Or I want to keep my hands in the dirt. That's what I like the most. Or did you say, no, I've got to be the leader, the guy that sits in the office that send crews out? Did you do an evaluation of what your skills were, or did you have to pick something that you didn't like as much?
That is such a good question, Cam, and very observant on your part. Every owner, to be successful, has to do some things they don't like to do. If you're trying to be an owner and you're going to try to grow a business and you think that you're only going to do things that you like to do, that's not going to happen. I mean, I had to go out and talk to a very unhappy customer yesterday. Now, we got it worked out. There was a little bit of overreaction on their part, some very poor communication on my team's part, and we got it worked out. I didn't want to go over there. I don't like confrontation. but I needed to do it because that's where my talents could best help the business going forward. And that's, I think, where you need to look. We're a big proponent of StrengthsFinder. If you or any of your listeners have ever done that, strengths as a rule, Cam, they give you energy. Weaknesses take energy away from you. So we try to put people as much as we can into their strengths, but there's going to be things you don't like doing. And it's those things that you don't like doing are often the walls that are keeping you from going forward. Like, I like Cam. He's a nice guy, but he really can't work here any longer. Oh, gosh, he's got 2 kids. I really don't want to talk to him. I'm going to kick that can down the road. We're not going to address that. And next thing you know, we have all kinds of problems. So, that in a nutshell is where it's at. You should be spending your time doing the things that you do best, but there's always going to be something you don't like doing that you got to do.
Yeah, I tell my children, someday you'll grow up and get a job, and if you can find a job where you like 50% of what you do, you're going to be better off than most. And 60% is even better. 70%, you're doing something great. Let's pick this up when we come back from break. Marty, I want to talk about how you groom people and retention being a big subject in our marketplace today. Before we go to break, I want to remind everybody about First Horizon Bank's Bucket Listening podcast. They interview CEOs and say, how did you start your bucket list prior to retirement? And how can First Horizon enable that for you? Bucket Listening. You'll find it on all the major podcast platforms by First Horizon Bank. We'll be right back.
This is Bill Eastet. I perfected my baking recipe behind my live music stage at my little restaurant in Fairhope, Alabama. We have custom-made smokers and small batch bacon made just for you. So if you're looking for the best bacon in America that has been cured, smoked, and even serenaded by songwriters, you definitely need to try Billy's Small Batch Bacon. www.billiesbacon.com.
This is Cam Marston. You're listening to What's Working. Marty Gründer is on the other side of a Zoom call from me in his office in his studio in Dayton, Ohio. He's grown several businesses now. We're going to get into each of them, grow being the key word. Started out as a landscaping company, continues to do so, and has grown outward from there. Marty, prior to the break, we were talking about grooming and retaining people. Most of my clients, not the radio show, but my clients are interested in solving the turnover equation. And I've got insights that I think help them. I'm very curious what your interpretation of the workforce is today and what you've done to try to solve the turnover equation.
It's interesting, Cam. I'm 55 years old, and in the last 5 years, I'm one of the oldest people here. I think I'm the second oldest person in our company, maybe the third, but I'm up there. And I think there's a lot of misnomers. There are probably a lot of young people running around saying that, guys my age don't really know what we're doing. We don't know how to put together a workplace that someone wants to be in. And old guys are saying young people just don't have a work ethic anymore. I think both groups are wrong. I think, when I was in business school, Cam, the word empathy was never used. I didn't hear it the entire 4 years of business school. And it's a word that needs to be present in modern business for you to be successful. You have to be creating a workplace culture that others want to work in, and it can't all be about the owner, or you're not going to win. There's all sorts of people out there sharing strategies to try to recruit people. But at the end of the day, Cam, the best way to recruit people to your company is to make your place a great place to work. And that requires a lot of stuff. I mean, I know we don't have all day. We literally could talk for weeks about that.
Yeah.
And what I can tell you, a couple things that need to be present in your workplace for someone to want to stay there. And here's the important part: not only just stay there, but help you be a recruiter. Help you find other people to join your team. There has to be a career path for them. Our mission statement here at Gründer Landscaping Company is to create opportunities for our team to grow and succeed by enhancing the beauty and value of every client's property while exceeding their expectations every step of the way. If you work here, you have to know that mission statement. You have to know our 4 core values: quality, leadership, teamwork, and profitability. We hire to those, we fire to those. That's part of our culture. By the way, the first 4 letters of the word culture spell cult. I'm just saying, this is a good cult. All right?
Yeah.
So when someone comes here, the very first day they're here, their name is on a locker. Their uniforms are in their locker. We're talking for production positions that we have in our company because that's where we have the most turnover. That's the tough stuff. Maybe for the first time in their life, someone feels loved. At the end of that day, a manager calls them. The following day, a manager comes out and asks them how their first day went. It's hard work. You're going to be sore at the end of the day. You might not feel like getting back up. But if somebody cares about you, if somebody genuinely took an interest in you, you may be able to get them to stay. And we have numerous success stories that point to that. Showing them that there's a career path, meeting with them regularly, giving them updates, handing out compliments with specificity, not telling someone that they did a good job, but going into great detail about how they did a good job. You know, it's a lot of things. There is no magical silver bullet to get and keep people. It's a lot of little things, but first and foremost, it's an engaged owner. It's an engaged leadership team. It's people that give a darn about one another's. The Gallup Q12, if you're familiar with that at all, it's 12 workplace questions. We focus on that. One of those questions, Cam, if you're familiar with it, says, do I have a best friend at work?
Yeah.
I mean, most of the reasons we find here in our companies and in the hundreds of landscaping companies that we work with across the country, it's the soft skills. It's the ability of the manager. I'm not going to be out on the job site with the team, and they may encounter a problem. There may be a conflict. Is your team trained on how to handle that? Are there proper ways to handle that? So, again, it would take us a long time to develop all this, but it starts with the employee feeling loved, seeing that there's a path for them for greatness, and how that their efforts can make a difference. But one more thing real quick. You mentioned Joe Calloway. Joe Calloway and I have a mutual friend by the name of Mark Sanborn. He's a best-selling author. The guy he's brilliant. He has a book called You Don't Need a Title to Be a Leader. And in the book, he defines a leader as someone who can make things better. And that's what we talk a lot about here. You don't have to have a title to be a leader. You could just start here today at Gründer Landscaping Company, and you can make things better. And when people realize that their actions on a daily basis are contributing to a win and somebody cares about them, that is the foundation to a great culture in a company.
Let me ask you this. This puts a lot of responsibility on the shoulders of your managers, which means that they need to be taught empathy. Is there a track that you have for managers, or do you select only people to become managers who have shown the capability of empathy? Or is this something you've got to train them on, look them in the eye and say, listen, you can do the job. It's obvious you can do the job, but I worry about how you're concerned for a team and whether you can pull that off.
You got to give people a shot. So our best leaders here, I will be blunt and tell you, they're homegrown. They're ones that started out on the crew, moved to running the crew, running the department, then they're on the leadership team because they understand all levels. It's like our mutual friend Joe Calloway talks about a bank that he works with, and where the people have to start out at the teller position, no matter what role they were hired for. We don't do that, but our best managers are homegrown. For us to grow at the clip we want to grow at, we have to bring people in and you give them a shot. You have them run the crews on Saturday, and you don't tell them I'm watching you. You just say, hey, we're a little short staffed. I'd like you to manage on Saturday. Here's some basic things to follow, and you see how they do, and you observe. It's not a whole lot different than, I played baseball when I was little, and you take some kids and they weren't that good when you started, and next thing you know, they're starting to hit the ball or they're pitching better or throwing better. You don't know what you've got until you give some people a shot. And you have to see, and we do train them. We spend a lot of time role playing, believe it or not, with all kinds of scenarios. And then the other thing I think we do extraordinarily well that is part of developing people, and that's catching them doing right and recognizing them for doing right in front of others. It's an old Dale Carnegie trick. I learned it in his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
What is your day spent like? Give me a sense of you work, let's assume a 10-hour day. Give me a sense of what your day is. This is interesting to me considering all the time that you place focusing on your people. How does your day look as the leader of the organization?
My day in 2023 looks a lot different than my day did in 2018.
Sure.
I am the founder and CEO of our companies. I don't run any of them anymore. I have a president in one company, a vice president in another, and a general manager in another that runs them. The subsidiary we have, the landscaping company, is run by our president. So I have some very capable things. And it's exciting, Cam. For the first time in my life, I'm doing what I do best, which is business development and people development. So I do a lot of training with our team. That's my role. And I do a lot of meeting people and introducing them to our salespeople so that we can see if we can do business with them. So, it's probably not a coincidence that I'm finally, after 40 years in business, 55 years of age, I'm finally doing what I do best with the majority of my time. It took a long time to get there, and I'm helping us make our culture better by doing role playing with a group of 3 leaders and presenting them with a situation that somebody's mad on the team. They feel that they shouldn't have to run the weed eater all day. You snap into that character. I'll be the manager. Let's see how you handle it.
Yeah.
It's no different than an athlete on the Bengals practices all week for an opportunity in the game. And we have a family friend that used to be the tight end for the Bengals. And I asked him one time, I said, how do you do that? He said, Mr. Marty, he said, I had practiced that play so many times that when the game came, that was easy. And that's how it goes.
Yeah, I'd love to hear, when we come back from break, let's do this. You role play with one of your employees. He or she gets it wrong. How do you correct them to get it right? Because if you can snap and reduce their interest in it, how do you correct them to get it right? We'll cue that up when we get back from break. You're listening to What's Working, folks. I got Marty Gründer on the other side of a Zoom call. We'll talk about how to correct and encourage once we come back from break. We'll be right back.
This is Seth Cherniak, Vice President of Branch Development for the Jeffrey Matthews Financial Group. If you're an experienced financial advisor wanting the freedom of independence, but aren't sure making that jump is right for you, we should talk. Jeffrey Matthews has developed a successful program for advisors who don't want to be 1099 contractors and don't want to pay for their own overhead. We're looking for advisors who want the freedom to run their business the way they see fit, with the support that comes with a W-2 firm. If you're interested in joining one of our branches, or if you want to open your own branch as a full-time employee, let's chat. Our compensation plan is one of the most competitive among all W-2 firms, big or small. Reach out to us today at jeffreymatthews.com, connect with me, Seth Cherniak, on LinkedIn, or click the link in the podcast.
Jeffrey Matthews Financial Group, member FINRA, SIPC. Marty Grunder's on the other side of a Zoom call for me. You're listening to What's Working. Marty and I are going through the various scenarios that an entrepreneur needs to know as they grow beyond their own, what they're able to reach, I guess, with their own hands. And one of the things Marty is keyed in on is training and running role plays. And when I hear people mention role plays, mostly they roll their eyes, but there's no question that these things work. Marty, you've presented one of your people with a role play. It's one of the managers, and they give you feedback on what they do, and the feedback is not what you'd want. Go through how to correct this manager so that he or she is eager to do it your way and not the way they thought they should do it.
Well, this happens all the time, and I'm well schooled in it. And I use a method that the U.S. Army uses. You'll hear other HR professionals and other consultants such as myself that think this is ridiculous. But Cam, I'm going to tell you, it's worked. I learned it when I was at the University of Dayton. I still use it today, and it's called the sandwich method.
Oh, I've heard of this. Please continue.
And so let's say you're role playing and you don't like with the way it played out. Well, first of all, there's no reason to get excited about it. That's why we're role playing. So I would start out and say, Jimmy, no, thanks, man. This is hard, isn't it? We're doing a role play here. I'm putting you on the spot, but this is how we get better. Don't you think? Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah, that's probably not the way I would recommend to handle that situation. You said if you don't like it, maybe you should look for another job. That's probably not the best opening statement. So let's talk about some other things you think you might have been able to say instead of that. Because look, let's all be honest, this role playing is tough, right? And I'll try to get them to come up with a better solution. You are always going to make a greater impact as a teacher if you can pull it out of them instead of inserting the words into their mouth. And oftentimes with that, Jimmy will say, yeah, I know, man, I don't know why I'm so nervous. There's only 4 of us here. And, I probably should have said, all right, well, I understand you're frustrated. When I started a couple days here, oh, Jimmy, this is good. Keep going. And get him, coach him. Don't tell him, coach him. I read an article many years ago about a football coach, and he was talking about the difference between presenting and teaching. And I see too many trainers, Cam, they present, okay? Presenting means you stand up in front of everybody, you regurgitate all this knowledge and expertise you have, and you say at the end, any questions?
Yeah.
Well, that's preposterous. Think about that. My wife was a kindergarten teacher. She just retired. You don't present to kindergartners. You have interactive sessions. It's the same thing with adults. So I told Jimmy, hey, thanks for the enthusiasm. I appreciate you being here. This is tough. You didn't handle that the way I'd handle it. Let's think about some other ways. What else could you have said? And I get it out of them. And then I can say, see, look how much you've improved just in 5 minutes. How many of you was this beneficial to as well? I mean, that's a really good question you asked me, and that's exactly how we do it. And it works, Cam. You gotta stay on that stuff. Those small little conflicts and the hand-to-hand combat that the manager on the front line of your business deals with, that's the make or break. Those are the people that your customers see, and they ultimately determine whether they're going to do business with you a second time based on those interactions.
Marty, so you said an HR department today would probably frown at your sandwich method. And if I recall, the sandwich method is called sandwich because you sandwich correction between 2 compliments
That's exactly perfect.
Overly simplify it. What would the HR person somebody out there is dealing with an HR person. What does the HR person say should happen?
I don't know what they say. I just think that we have gone down a bad road where you have ownership and you have the team, and then you have this HR department in many places in the middle that, quote, is advocating for the employee. And I just think that's nonsense, Cam. If we have to have someone in the organization to stand up for the employee, then something's wrong. You have to be able to teach your managers how to handle the issues with them. The HR department is for compliance. It's for checking boxes. It's for handling the nuts and bolts of someone working there. It's not for getting in the middle between ownership and employees at a small business. So we don't have an HR department here. We don't like to use this. This isn't a battle where we have legal representation between us and our employees. I mean, that just sounds so cold. I mean, we feel it's better to teach our team how to handle their folks and get it to where it doesn't even, they work it out. And I'm telling you, we're doing that. Now, it's taken a long, long time to get there, but I think that's the way to go about it.
Define culture for me. So a lot of what you've talked about here, indirectly and directly, points to culture. What is workplace culture and its value today?
One of my favorite definitions that we use of culture is what's going on when the owner and the leader isn't there.
Interesting. Okay.
That's what it is. And everyone has a culture. Every company, whether they're spelled out or not, has 4 values. I can look at your checkbook and tell you what's important to you. We replace tires before, way before a lot of companies probably replace them. We're carrying heavy weight on trucks. We don't want trucks sliding through intersections. Safety is important to us, and our checkbook shows it. Culture is what's going on when the owners and leaders aren't there.
How do you know what's going on when the owners and leaders aren't there?
You don't always know. We survey every client that we work with. The one question that we ask is for them to comment on the attitude of our team. I can't tell you the last time that we have gotten a bad survey based on attitude. Because here's the thing, Cam, your external customer service, the service that you're delivering your clients, it will never exceed your internal customer service. So how you treat your people will show up in how they treat the clients. And you know what rolls downhill, right?
Yeah.
So, I remember a couple of years ago, I did a keynote in Washington, D.C. I got on the American Airlines plane to fly back, and I was tired. I had my dress shoes on. I extended my shoes across the little fluorescent marker up there between the galley and the cabin, and the flight attendant kicked my foot, not hard, and she said, "That's not going to work. Move those back." And I looked at her, and I thought, man, somebody has just been awful to her.
Yeah.
I don't think that's her, and that's what we see in business. I think poor customer service means there's a poor manager back there.
I love that. That woman gave you a story for what it's worth.
She gave me a great story. Yep.
You do coaching of other landscape companies, and I'm watching my time here. We don't have a lot left. You do coaching of other landscaping companies across the country. From what Joe told me, you get about 1,000 attendees at your event each year. What is the most common mistake that these small businesses, let's try to ignore that they're landscape companies, but these small businesses tend to make that prevents them from the growth that you've seen?
It's focus. It's jumping into things. Structure always follows strategy, Cam. And when you jump into stuff and don't think through the repercussions, it is true you can get lucky. Once in a while you can. But structure always follows strategy. All planning is good. Spend time to plan. Consider the 3 scenarios. What's the best case scenario? We know you can handle that. What's the worst case scenario? That's where you need to spend the most time. And then give consideration to what's most likely to happen. All planning is good. That's it, no doubt.
So they don't plan. They fail to plan.
They come and see a company like mine, and we make it look easy. I've been doing this 40 years. We only had a half hour together because we're talking about my successes. Again, if we're going to talk about the stuff I screwed up, it'd be like a 4-year-long interview. And I think we live in a world where you push a button and some Amazon deliveries are on your doorstep two hours later.
Yeah.
You call someone, there's a pizza on your doorstep. There's a lot of stuff that goes behind making a business work, and you got to plan it through. It just does not happen overnight. I'm a 40-year overnight success story.
Yeah, I love that. I've heard many people say something similar. If we had more time, we're coming to the end of the show. One of the more popular conversations we have is about succession planning, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, perhaps with another show down the road. And I know you've got children. Joe tells me you've got children. I don't know if they're in the business and what you'd think about that. Can we get you back for that conversation?
Cam, I would be honored to come back. It's fun to talk. Thank you.
Tell the listeners how they can find you, Marty.
The easiest way is look up Marty Gründer. You can Google my name. You'll see all the stuff. You can go to growgroupinc.com. I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn. Would love to make a connection with you. And just because we only help landscapers doesn't mean you can't follow us and learn something from what we're doing.
Marty Gründer, folks, I'll put his links in the podcast notes. We'll be back after this break with final comments and what to expect on the next show. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston.
I'm Joey Mason. For 4 years, my goal has been to produce the best farm-to-table products I'd ever eaten. I've done just that at our on-site USDA facility in Grand Bay, Alabama, allowing us to ship directly to your door. This is true farm-to-table. Visit us at masonhillsfarm.com to see all that we have to offer.
Thank you, Marty. Wow, every now and then you hit a gold mine, a vein of gold through the rock of content that is understandable and actionable. And Marty absolutely provided that. That was glorious. Hopefully there was something each one of us can take from that conversation and apply to our own business. Real quick, you're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. We're back from break. This is segment 5, where we kind of recap what we've heard, as well as kind of talk about lessons learned and the future of the show. What I got from that is, and I'm a small business, much like what Marty described. We have a lot of vendors, contractors that help us grow the business. I don't have but one employee, really. And what I heard is that applies most to me is the need for planning. And this is something that over the years, I go through phases of great strength as well as times of great weakness. I am exactly what an entrepreneur may be, which is I love to find the stuff that I enjoy doing, and I try to stay close to that and hire the stuff that I don't enjoy, or send the stuff that I don't enjoy doing out for people to do it for me. I hire them to do it for me. But what I've not been good, I'll get back to that, is planning, is spending the beginning of the year or quarter, whatever it may be, saying, here's the plans for the year. Let's execute on this plan. It's usually the plan will be somewhat like we did last year. And the plan last year was the plan will be somewhat like we did last year, and kind of following the path of least resistance rather than making a diligent plan. A message learned from me now that we're in November, a plan that I will begin to execute, or hopefully begin late this year, and actually create a plan for the growth of the business. Great feedback on how to coach, how to mentor, how to redirect behavior as needed. And after the recording ended, Marty and I talked a good bit about his children who may be coming into the business at some point someday. He's got some insights on bringing next generation through, training them through the business, and he has agreed to be back on the show sometime in the first quarter of next year, where he can talk to me and to you, the small business owners out there, or maybe large business, who knows, who has a family business, on the correct way to get that next generation into the business, up to speed, profitable, and not just a member of what is crudely referred to as the Lucky Sperm Club. They actually are going to learn their way through the business and be contributors to that. You can look for that show in the coming part of next year. All right. Thanks also to Joe Calloway, who pointed Marty out to me, and I'm grateful for that introduction, Joe. Thank you very much. You can find this show as a podcast. You've heard me say this before. Go to whatsworkingcam.com. There you'll find this show, you'll find other shows, you'll find previous shows, you'll find links to the major podcast sites where you can subscribe to the show, and I hope you will do so. You can find me on social media. I usually am most active on LinkedIn as well as Facebook. Enter Cam Marston in there. You'll find me. You can go to also my website, cammarston.com. At the bottom of that homepage is a place where you can enter your email address, and I'm going to send you a chapter from my book called What's Working? The 10 Best Ideas from the First 200 Episodes. As a celebration of the first 200 episodes, we went back through all the old shows, got the 10 best ideas, not the 10 best episodes, the 10 best ideas. Many guests repeated the same idea, different words, but the same concept, documented them, organized them, made it into a book. We'll have another show next week. Have a good week, everybody. As you likely know, this show originates as a radio show broadcast across the state of Alabama, and it continues to grow in both radio listeners and market. After it's formatted for radio, we then turn it into this podcast. Please share it with those you think would find it interesting, and subscribe to the podcast on my YouTube page, where you can leave messages and your thoughts and your comments, and I'll certainly get back in touch. Finally, if you're a fan of the show, please offer a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can find my book called What Works on Amazon.com. In it, I highlight the top 10 ideas from the first 200 episodes of the show. Mind you, they're not the top 10 best episodes, they're the top 10 best ideas. Many times the same ideas are brought up again and again by different guests, and we dig into those ideas in such a way that they'll be easily applicable for your business. Simply go to Amazon and enter my name, and you'll find What Works as well as my other books. Chapter titles include How to Find a Niche, Innovation, Building Teams, and so forth. To learn more about the workshops and seminars I offer, go to cammarston.com. There you can view clips of my work, view workshop titles, view my reviews, case studies, customer lists. It's all there. If you'd like a free copy of one of the chapters of my book, enter your email address at the bottom of the homepage at cammarston.com. And from that site, you can email me directly. I always love to hear from you. You'll also find me on social media. Find Cam Marston on all the social media platforms, and you may need to enter the numeral 1. There's one other Cam Marston out there, and that numeral 1 distinguishes me from him from time to time. So if you're unsure if it's me or not, enter that numeral 1 after my name, and it should do the trick. On a more personal and less professional side, I record weekly commentaries that air across Alabama on Alabama Public Radio twice each day on Fridays called Keeping It Real. They've won statewide and national awards. They're simple observations on the world as it goes on around me, and they're only a few minutes long. They're a passion. You can find them on the same podcast app you're using to listen to this. Finally, if you're interested in advertising on this podcast or the radio show, reach out. I've worked hard to cultivate a specific listener, and I can tell you all about them, and I have many different options for helping you reach them. Thanks again for listening. We'll have another episode available soon.